Thank you, Monica, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about the importance of being a good presenter. It's really important, to be a really good presenter, because especially in today's economic, financial situation, it's especially important to be a good presenter. So I do have a couple of things. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I hate when it happens to me all the time. Give me just a second. I should have numbered these. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just do this. You all have a mission statement on your front of your desk. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that up on the screen, and I want you to follow along with me as I read it aloud. My mission is to help business professionals become more effective in preparing and are you following on your papers? Delivering presentations. I will achieve this outcome by working in a one-on-one capacity. Oh no. That's not good. Hold on a minute. This always happens to me. Okay, I'll stop there. How many people have sat through a presentation just like this? How many people have delivered a presentation just like this? They're awful, aren't they? Yeah, and we see them all the time. I see in the 7 or so years that I've been doing this class, this presentation lecture, and the classes that I offer with it, I have those things that you just saw me do, that bad opening, I didn't make up any of those. Every single one of those things is something I have seen in a professional business presentation. Sometimes by people who have been in this business presenting for 25 years, executive vice presidents for big corporations, and that's the way they get up and present. And they're murder. It's an awful way to get up and present. So today I want to talk to you about some of the things that we do when we present, and some things you can do quickly to fix some of those problems, some of those issues. So let's go back real quick, and I'm just going to write down on the board here. Tell me what I did wrong in that presentation. What were some of the things I did wrong in that opening presentation? What's that? Audible pauses. What else?
You read your material.
I read my material.
With your back to it.
With my back to it, yes. Didn't I had good eye contact with one person, didn't I? I had good eye contact with you, didn't I? Okay. Yeah. Eye contact. What else?
Things to number your material.
I have to number my material. My cards, yes.
That's number one. You number your notes.
Yes. Okay, so I'll just call that being properly prepared, okay? What else? Monotone voice, okay. So we're going to go voice. Dynamics, what else? Fidgety, okay.
The technology issues, was that preparedness?
Sure, that would be tech and performance. Anything else?
You weren't very confident.
Not very confident. No confidence. What else?
No enthusiasm.
No enthusiasm. How did it feel when I said I'm really excited to be here today? Did you believe me?
No, not engaged.
Anything else? That's pretty much what I figured you would see. That's what I always see when I deliver that. The one thing I want to point this out right off the bat, because I'll get to this and then we'll dispense with this portion of it. I put out the mission statement. And how many people read this before I started speaking? Did anybody read it when they sat down? This is a big problem with handouts. Something that I see all the time when I walk into a meeting, if I'm going to go assess somebody and their speaking skills, and I'm going to try to train them, one of the things I see is a lot of handouts. on the tables. The first thing people do after they come in and get their coffee and do their chatting with one another is they go to their handouts and they read the handout. I've seen books open where people will go through the entire book. And so there's no surprise anymore about what the speaker is going to be talking about. What has happened is I have given up control of focus by putting this on your table. I no longer control when I want you to see this. You control that. And my presentations are always about controlling what people see and when they see it. We'll talk more about that in a little while, but I wanted to get this out of the way. I always recommend, unless it's something like you put an introduction down, that's fine. But if it's something that's going to be part and parcel of your presentation, you need to control when that goes out. What I should have done with this, if I were going to actually show you my mission statement, I would have said, I'm going to pass out a mission statement now, I want you to take a look at this, or I would put it up on the screen like I did. But I'm not going to do both, and I'm certainly not going to read that mission statement after I put it up there. You want to control this information when it gets out. By the way, I think the mission statement in a presentation is worthless. A mission statement is an internal document for your organization. That's for you to share with your employees and your associates. But it's nothing that the public needs to know. Everybody's mission statement is to try to make the world a better place, to try to improve people's way of life. It's superfluous. You don't need it. So I recommend if you have a mission statement in your PowerPoint presentation, get rid of it. You don't need it. Why do you think that presentations like I just did are so bad? What do you think is the number one reason why these things are so poor? Anybody?
Not prepared.
Not prepared. That is it exactly. I hear all sorts of other things. Oh, I don't like to speak in public. I'm nervous. I don't have time. Not prepared. That is at the base of the reason why presentations are so poor. And it's because people feel like they don't have time. But here's what happens when you're not prepared. You do what I just did. And it can be a disaster. And it can be a disaster in three different ways. The first way is when you get up to speak to a group of people, whether you're a salesperson, you speak to people once a week, or you speak to people once a month, once a quarter, once a half year, once a year. When you get up to present, sometimes the only connection your audience has with your company is going to be you. I'm sorry, what, Mark? I'm sorry. Brian, I'm sorry. Brian, tell me again the name of your company.
TechWise.
TechWise. Okay, let's say that Brian gets up. Do you speak to people often, Brian?
Every day.
Okay. Let's say Brian gets up to speak to people. And they all know, oh, Brian from TechWise is coming in to talk to us today. And Brian gets up and he does what I just did. When people get done with that meeting and he leaves and they start talking about it, they don't say, boy, that Brian really did a poor job presenting. They say, TechWise did a really poor job of presenting their information. So Brian now is a personification of that company. And if he did this, and I'm not saying you would, but if this were to happen, he's basically given TechWise a black eye because he didn't go out prepared. So you need to remember that you are the public face of your organization. There's a financial aspect to this. I'm going to throw some numbers out here. I want you to think about this. You mentioned about being prepared. Most people don't take time to prepare a presentation. I did this presentation for an architectural firm. And we were talking about taking the time to prepare. And I asked them, because they would go in to do client proposals, client interviews. And they would take 5 or 6 people in to go present maybe a multi-million-dollar architectural engineering project. They did a lot of stuff for colleges, universities. They would be somebody who might do a facility like this facility we're in today. And they would take 5 or 6 people in to do a presentation. They'd show their drawings, their ideas, their schematics, what they thought the new facility was going to look like. And I said, how often do you prepare before you go into that meeting? And I swear to you, I'm not lying, they said, we usually get together in the 10 minutes we're waiting in the lobby of the client's office. I'm not kidding. I said, oh really? Oh yeah, we go in there and we just kind of wing it. You wing it for a multi-million-dollar project? And I also worked one-on-one with these folks, and I'm telling you, they shouldn't have been winging anything. It was not good. Let's say, for example, that you are going to go give a presentation for a company or a client who's possibly going to bring you $50,000 worth of work, a $50,000 influx of money into your organization. Now let's say you make $75,000 a year. That's roughly $38 an hour. I recommend, if you're going to get up and do a presentation, and you don't do it on a regular basis like Brian does, you should spend at least 10 hours preparing your presentation. That's at a minimum. Do we have anybody in the room who played athletics in high school or college? Any athletes? Okay. What did you do, Pat?
Football and track.
Football and track. Anybody else? Okay. How about you? What did you do?
Basketball.
Basketball. Okay. Yes. What did you do?
Volleyball.
Volleyball. Okay. Team sports, right? Okay. I hate that. I was a wrestler in high school. So I was in an individual sport on a team. But every week when we would practice, we would spend 3 hours a day practicing. 2 hours of practice, an hour of conditioning. How often did you practice when you were playing football?
Well, every night, 2-3 hours.
2 or 3 hours. So 15 hours a week probably. How about you?
Similar.
Similar? And you? So as high school students or as college students, we would spend 15 hours a week preparing for our event. 15 hours a week. And we're doing this every week, right? Your season, our season was 5.5 months. We did it every week. And I wasn't making money. I had school, and I had my chores, and I had my practice. People, when they go in, business people, professionals, when they go in to do a presentation, sometimes they prepare for maybe an hour or 40 minutes. I'll look over my slides. I'll make sure I know what the slides say. I'll make sure there aren't any typos. Sometimes I don't even do that. Let's say you're going to pitch for a job that could bring you $50,000, and you're making $38 an hour. I'm saying 10 hours a week spend to prepare. 10 hours a week times 38 is $380. Now, if you take $380 and you figure what percentage of $50,000 is that, it's less than 1%. So is it worth your company's investment of less than 1% to have you go somewhere and prepare your presentation? And most people say, I don't have time, I'm very busy. Well, you know what? Go in early. Work through your lunch, stay late. But if you're talking about $50,000 worth of work, it's worth that $380, and I'm sure to your boss it would be worth that $380 for you to prepare properly, to go in and give a great presentation. And if you do the things that some of the things I'm going to suggest, you're going to up your opportunities, your chances to land those gigs. It's all about preparation. And you need to start now, whatever you're doing. If you speak once every 6 months, start now. Put your presentation together now and get it in your head. So it's kind of working in the back of your head while you're waiting for that 6-month period to come up. Brian, you're presenting all the time, so it's not as big a deal for you, but you still need to go back. Anybody who presents on a regular basis, you still need to go back through your material, make sure it's relevant, make sure you don't have any spelling errors or any issues that are throwing people's focus off. You're the presentation. One of the problems that I see with any presentation, especially if you're using PowerPoint, is everybody relies on the PowerPoint. That's my presentation. Well, if that's your presentation, put it in an email, send it off to your client, stay home in your office and drink coffee. We don't need you if your PowerPoint is your presentation. Your presentation is you, and your PowerPoint is simply support for your presentation. I hate these things. Why does anybody put an organizational chart in their PowerPoint presentation? You can't read it from back there, and so who cares? Maybe I care where I am on the organizational chart, but it doesn't really matter who I report to. And if it does matter who I report to, I'm going to put their name up on the slide with their picture, and I'm going to say, this is the guy I report to. Nobody else is important. It doesn't matter, all that other stuff. One company I did some work for, they would spend a good 5 minutes talking about their company. We started 75 years ago, we have 350, blah, 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 we're in 60 different cities, blah, 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 blah. I can find that on the internet. I don't need to hear that from you. If I'm bringing you in to speak to me, it's because you have a product or a service that you want to sell me, or I want to learn more about your company. But trust me, I've already done research on your company on the internet. So I don't need to know how many years you've been in business, or who the head of your company is, or your organizational chart. Save that for when your clients go to your website, or give them a handout at the end of your presentation where they can get that information. Don't waste their time with this kind of stuff. I'm going to talk, let's talk a little bit about the actual physical presentation. We mentioned I had a lot of audible pauses. What are audible pauses? Why do people do them? Anybody know? Nervous? What else?
Gives them time to think.
Gives them a little time to think.
Gives you time to think.
Gives me as a speaker time to think, and if I'm prepared, okay. If I'm prepared, I don't need that time. What else? What's the other reason? There's a real basic reason why people do audible pauses. They're afraid of silence. Speakers hate for there to be silence in the room. So they talk all the time, and then when they get done talking, they go, because they're afraid that if they stop talking, everyone's going to get up and leave. It's never happened to me. I've never paused for a minute to gather my thoughts and had everybody get up and go. Oh, he must be done. You'll know when I'm done. Take that silence. Don't put an audible pause in there. And audible pauses are ums, you knows. I call those intelligent audible pauses. I heard a woman do an audible pause. I didn't realize it was an audible pause the first time I heard it. Her audible pause was as far as. She was talking about the hospitality industry, and she was telling a little story about people in the hospitality industry and how you needed to be a really good customer service person if you're working, say, in a hotel or a restaurant. As far as someone might come in and say, I want to go find a really good restaurant to eat at, but we don't like Mexican food. Can you make any recommendations? As far as my husband, he doesn't like spicy food. As far as I don't like really hot Indian food. As far as we want to go somewhere right after the ball game. And after about the third time she did the as far as, I realized that's her audible pause. You got to get rid of those. They will kill you. And you may not even realize you're doing it, but your audience realizes it right away. And when I'm sitting in an audience and I hear an or you know, I start marking them down. And I spend the entire talk marking down audible pauses. That's my bad. But it makes me crazy. Yes, Brian.
You mentioned that was in Ann Arbor yesterday. There was some presenters there. The lady kept saying, and like you said, I was just counting how many she was doing. And I don't remember what she presented because I was counting the ums.
Mm-hmm.
The message was lost.
Right. It's really important to get rid of those. And I'll tell you another thing. I would normally say this toward the end, but you can see that Jennifer back there. Say hi to Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Jennifer's videotaping my presentation. I do it for promotional purposes, but I also do it so I can look back and see what I'm doing. Because I have no idea, as I'm up here yammering, what's coming out of I know what's coming out of my mouth, but I may be doing something that I don't even realize. And the only way I'm going to see this is if I look at the videotape after I'm done. And then I'll go, a real quick story. When I was doing stand-up professionally back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was not great. I used to wear a very popular mullet back then. And I was taping my show, and I was having a hard time with an audience, and I lost them, and they disappeared, and it got ugly really fast. And I thought, I wonder what happened. So I went back to watch the videotape, and the minute I started to lose the audience, I started to reach back and tug on my hair. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize I did that. I looked at a couple other tapes where I had bombed, because I had a lot of those. Every time I started to bomb, I would go back and tug on my hair. And I had no idea I was doing it. It was a tell to the audience. But we don't see it, we don't know it until we see ourselves doing it on videotape. So if you're a presenter and you do it frequently or infrequently, I recommend you get it videotaped and look at it and try to improve your presentation. Reading the material. I read that slide to you. People read their slides all the time. You shouldn't even have words up there on the slide to read. Your slide should be, and sometimes it's tough because you have a lot of technical information. I still think if you have technical information you put up on a slide, they're not going to read it. Or they're going to read it and they're going to ignore you. And typically what happens is you put up a technical slide or a slide with a lot of information and people start to read the slide, and what do they do when they start to read the slide? They block me out. Yep, they're not listening to me anymore. They're reading that slide. If you have technical information, put it in a handout. Make your slides interesting. Make them grabby. Eye contact. I did this to you. I hate doing this to people because I know it makes them uncomfortable. But when I was doing that initial talk, I locked in on you. What's your name?
Lynn?
Lynn? I locked in on Lynn. Did you feel uncomfortable when I locked in on you? No, really?
That was okay. But
Okay.
I see your point.
Some people, I've done this as an example, and I've gone much longer, and it makes people fidgety. Because they start to think, why won't he look at anybody else? Why does he keep looking at me? Do I have lettuce in my teeth? You have to move your eye contact around the room. I try to make eye contact with everyone who's taking the time to look at me. And sometimes people aren't looking at me, and I just like, okay, well, I'm not going to make eye contact with them. But I try to move my eye contact around the room, and I try not to focus on one single person. If I make that person uncomfortable, I'm making everybody else uncomfortable in the room because they're all thinking, what's so great about her that he's only looking at her? Why is he not looking at me? Eye contact is real important. Being prepared with your tech and with your performance. That's what all this is about. I see a lot of times when people put up a PowerPoint program and there is a technical issue. I think you need to be able to deliver your material without the tech if there's a catastrophic failure of some sort. Or you can take redundancy with you. Take 2 laptops and an iPad and everything else and go about it that way. I think you need to know your material well enough that if you do have a failure back here, you can still deliver the material. Voice dynamics. I was too soft early on. I was kind of mumbly. You need to be able to project to the back of the room. Make sure everyone can hear you. If you have to use a microphone, use a microphone. I've been in comedy clubs that are no bigger than this room, and we use a microphone because a microphone builds presence in the room. So if you have access to a microphone, use it. If you don't, make sure you have good vocal dynamics. You also want to move your vocal dynamic range around. You don't want to speak in one tone the whole time. I'll give you an example of that in just a little bit. But that's really, well, I'll do that now. I'm not going to say that. I do a lot of speaking to college students who are filmmakers. In fact, I'm going to be doing that for the next 2 days down in Bowling Green because I am also an independent filmmaker. And one of the hardest things about being an independent filmmaker is we have to raise money for our projects. My first project was $100,000, but sometimes we're looking for $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. And you need to go to people who have money and ask them to give you money. And so this is a part of the lecture I do for the college students. I was going to speak to a guy I went to high school with who's a millionaire. And he was going to give me $25,000 for my film. Now $25,000 is this, he makes that in a week. Big deal. But I went to meet with him, and we chatted for a little while, and then he got up, he said, I'm going to go get the check out. And he came over to me, and he handed me the check for $25,000, and as he did it, his hand was going like that. And I thought to myself, wow, that's interesting. He's nervous about giving me $25,000. And then I realized what he's doing is it's like he's saying, this is my baby. Don't kill my baby. I want my baby back in a year or two, older, healthy, nicely clothed. What did I just do? I did a couple things in that little example. What did I do? Anybody notice? Changed my voice. I lowered it.
You made it personal.
I made it personal to you. What else?
Use a metaphor.
I used a metaphor. Mm-hmm. What else? I acted it out. If you can act something out, it makes it more powerful for you. It's just a little drama. You don't have to be an actor to do that. We all do those sorts of things every day. So just put that into your presentation. I actually, when I do it for the college students, I swear. And the language always catches people's attention. I use one word in there. This is my baby, and I say something other than don't kill my baby. But for college students, it works, and it grabs their attention right away. Some people push back on it. But I do that with I don't swear ever any other time in my presentation except that one time, and only for the young crowd. But it does work. Anything I can do to grab your attention, especially if I feel like you're starting to flag a little bit. I was fidgety that first time around, right? Try not to do that. That's so hard, especially if you're not used to speaking in front of an audience. That's part of being nervous, is being fidgety. Some people talk with their hands like I do. They always say, oh, I talk with my hands too much. No, really you don't. If that's how you talk with your hands. It's okay. If you don't like the fact that you do that, put your hands in front of you like this and hold one down. Don't hold it down like that so it doesn't come up. But you can just hold it down here, and once you get into your presentation, you'll forget about your hands. Actors have this problem all the time. I don't know what to do with my hands. Forget about them. They'll take care of themselves. You just present. No confidence. That just comes from not being prepared. If you're prepared, you'll be confident, even if you're not a confident speaker, because you know what you're going to say, you know where you're going to start. It's like a roadmap. I'm going to start here, I'm going to go to this point, and I'm going to get there in this direction. As soon as you know that and you know your material, your confidence comes up, and you don't have that weird thing that I was doing that made you all think I didn't have any confidence. Not being engaged. If I get up and say I'm really excited to be here and I'm not, and the speaker gets up and says that and they're not, my first thought is he doesn't want to be here. I see this all the time. I see this a lot in the medical profession. I do some speaking for healthcare, and I see people get up who are professionals in the healthcare system, and they say things that I don't believe one bit. They're there because they have to be there, because their boss wants them to be there to present the new drug for glaucoma or whatever it is. Whatever it is you're talking about, you have to find some passion in it, and it has to be exciting to you. You have to engage your audience. Have you seen this speaker? I love when I see this speaker because they kind of make me a little bit crazy sometimes. And whenever they do this, I always wonder, why are you doing that? And they say, well, I'm just trying to show the audience that I'm engaged and I'm excited and I'm really happy about what I'm doing. What are you doing? This is a small room. They say, I want to engage everybody in the room. Well, you know what? Do you all feel engaged in this little room with me right now? I saw Jack Canfield speak to 600 people in Los Angeles in 2010. You all know who Jack Canfield is? A Chicken Soup for the Soul books. The guy's wealthy beyond belief. He got up and spoke to 600 people in this large ballroom, and he stood like this, and he spoke, and the only time he moved twice in his presentation to demonstrate something. So he was on a stage, and there was an apron. And as he was presenting, he would go to tell a little story, like I just did with you. He'd walk out, he'd deliver the story, then he'd pause, he'd turn around. He didn't talk on the way back. He got back to the stage and he started talking. He re-engaged his audience and he started talking again. Walking around and then talking as you're walking away, you've turned your back on your audience. Don't talk while you've turned your back on your audience. And never read your slides because your back is to your audience. I now don't know what anybody's doing out here. If I'm looking at you as I speak, I know if I've engaged people, if people are dozing off. Typically not going to embarrass somebody if they fall asleep. I don't know what their life is like. But if they're on their iPad or their phone, I may go over and stand by them, just so they know that I know that they're doing something that they're distracted by. If you have to be distracted with an iPhone, as an audience member, I say leave the room. I'm not going to be offended if you leave the room, especially if you leave all your stuff on the table. But don't do it while someone's talking. And if they do, I go over and stand next to them. Okay, let's talk a little bit about power. I want to make sure I have so much. This is a 4-hour lecture. I'm trying to get it down to 1 hour.
Is that one of those audible pauses right there?
This was an audible pause. But what did I do when I was audible pausing? Did I or ah or anything like that? I like the silence. Bill Cosby, y'all know who Bill Cosby is. He tells young comedians, learn to love the silence, because it's going to be there. I insert silences in my presentation just because I like it. I'm a little sick. Let's talk about slides. Let's talk about PowerPoint, because that's an area where a lot of presentations just fall completely apart. You can be a great presenter, but you start putting your PowerPoint slides up and everything falls apart. Here's some things you shouldn't do. Don't use bad photographs. They look great on your computer screen, but when you get up on a big screen like this, it looks awful. Looks like I didn't prepare. Looks like I didn't even look at the slide before I put it up on the screen. I don't know where I found this, but I found the worst photo I could find. But I see these a lot in presentations. Here's another thing about photographs. Someone will have a great photograph and they put it on a screen and it's teeny tiny in the middle of the screen. Why is it so small? This is not interesting. This background isn't interesting. That's just something for me to put my slides on. Make that slide big. Fill that screen with it. Now you can see what I'm talking about. The other thing I love is when people put a slide up like this, and then they say, now if you look right here, you can see that our sales are way down because of this awning we put on the... Make it big. Or if you're going to indicate a particular part of the slide, put that slide up and then do an isolation of just the awning you're talking about and have that come up next. Control what your audience sees when they see it. Real important. Again, I've said this 3 times, don't do this. It's just not good. And if you're, again, like I say, if you're reading your slides, that means you have too many words on your slides. Okay, now I know there's a lot of information up there. I don't want you to pay attention to most of that. What I'd like you to pay attention to is the average monthly temperature in January. Then why is all that other stuff up there? If all you want me to pay attention to is the average monthly temperature in January, put that only up on the screen. I don't know what to look at on this. And then and I hear this all the time. There's a lot of information up there. Don't pay attention to that. Or they'll just say, you know what? We'll just move on. We don't need that. Take a look at this slide, and I want you to just read it to yourself, and then I want you to tell me what the most important point on that slide is. Anybody think there's anything more important than that 4th bullet? Anybody? Most important bullet. Anybody?
4th bullet.
4th? Okay, for you too. Okay. I think they're all important. I've been hiking in the wilderness. I think they're all important. But you have no idea what I think is important because I've slammed this up on the screen, all these bullet points all at once, and you've got to read all this while I'm talking, possibly not about these subjects. Here's a great idea. 1 topic or 1 idea per slide. Now this is going to make your slide presentation a lot longer, but it's not going to feel long to your audience. And I would also say, cut down the number of words and put an image up there. The image is more powerful than the words. Got to have plenty of fresh water. That's important. Boy, you really need to control the weather forecast, because what if you get out in a slot canyon out in Utah somewhere and there's a thunderstorm that rolls in? You could be drowned in that slot canyon. Now, you have to dress for the weather. That's clearly important because it could get really cold at night. What if you get stuck and now you don't have weather? You don't have clothing for the proper weather. Every bullet point on that slide is important in its own way, but I'm controlling what I want you to see when I want you to see it. And I can talk for as long or as short a time as I want about destination and return, and you're not going to be reading ahead. Also, I always try to use interesting images whenever I can. I use this grizzly bear image all the time. I just think it's a great image. Good images keep the audience's attention. And you see, I have very few words up on the screen. I could actually do this without those words. I just have the big slide up there, and I could talk about each one of those things because I'm prepared. I know what each image signifies. I know a lot of people say, well, I can't do that with my slides because I make a handout of my slides, and I give all the people in the room a handout of my PowerPoint presentation. Make 2 PowerPoint presentations. Make one you present, and make a second one that you hand out. In PowerPoint and in Keynote, you can do notes on the bottom of your slides. And when you make a printout, you can print out 3 slides per page with the associated notes. So I can print that, give that to everybody. Now you know what I talked about, and you know the image. So when you see the image, you go, oh yeah, I remember when he was talking about going on the hike. Oh, there's that information he talked about. It's not that much more work to make 2 programs or to make a different interpretation of the program you're delivering. And it's great for your audience. But don't give them that handout until when? At the end. A lot of people like to do this. I don't understand this. This makes no sense to me. But they find some clever ways to do it. There's the blast, bounce, the cube, the comet, the flame, the sparkle. You don't need those. I saw an attorney's firm. They were doing a mock trial. They had a multi-million-dollar settlement was riding on this trial, and so they had a mock trial. They wanted to test out juries to see where they were going to fall when they presented their information and figure out if they were presenting the right information, what they needed to soft sell, what they needed to hard sell. So they had put together a PowerPoint presentation, and they had things coming in from the side. They'd have lines of type coming in from the side, and when the lines of type came in from the side, I'm sorry, that was supposed to be a black slide. All right. See, I just screwed up. They had these lines of type coming in, and as they came in, there was a squealing of brakes. It wasn't an auto accident case. It had to do with something out at the airport. what did that brake squealing and what did I do? My first thought was, I wasn't paying attention to the slides anymore. I was thinking, why do they use brakes? Just because there are cool things in PowerPoint doesn't mean you have to use them. They're there for a specific reason. Most of this fancy stuff you're never going to use. Pardon me?
For example, they probably use somebody else's presentation.
They may have, yeah. I hope they used a different presentation when they actually did the trial, although they did win, so I can't argue on it. If you're going to use slides and you're going to use words on your slides, it's very important to do this. My big beef with college students is not knowing the difference between the words there, and there, or two, and two. And it's not just college students. I see it in older professionals who don't know which word to use. If you don't know, ask somebody. That's another thing that turns me off. When I crew a project, like if I'm getting ready to do a film, I do a call for applications, for resumes, for actors, for crew people. If somebody sends me a resume or a cover letter and it's got a misspelling in it, you know what I do with that letter and that resume? Yep. And you know why I do that? What the reason is? If they don't have enough attention to detail for something that represents them, how much attention to detail are they going to have working for me? I don't want them on my set. They cost me money. In my little first independent film, my low-budget independent film, every day was a $4,000 day. I can't have someone who's going to ruin a $4,000 day because they don't care. They're just there for the paycheck. Not that people don't work for the paycheck, but I want them to work for something else as well. I want them to say, this is important, I'm going to do the best job that I can. Spell checking is really important. Now, you can spell check till the cows come home. You still have to proof your stuff. I talk about this, and then I'll go home and I'll look at one of my websites, and I'll find a spelling error on my website. And I go, oh, I just spent an hour talking about spelling, and there's a spelling error. Here's another favorite technique. The presenter uses bullet points to emphasize a particular idea, but ends up making everything a bullet. Bullet points are great, but one idea per slide, you don't have to worry about bullet points. I've mentioned this a couple times, controlling what your audience sees when they see it. Try to watch whatever political affiliation you have. Try to watch one of these news stations. Listen to Anderson Cooper or Shepard Smith or whoever it is you like to listen to. And also try to read the crawl at the bottom of the screen. It can't be done. You cannot do both and have 100% comprehension by doing that. That's why I say control what your audience sees when they see it. You notice my screen goes blank a lot, right? What happens when my screen goes blank? Where's your attention go? Right back to me. Controlling what your audience sees when they see it. I have tons of black slides. When I get ready to put together a presentation, I'll put 20 black slides at the bottom of the presentation. And when I feel like I need a break, when I want to get your attention back, I just move the black slide right up into the line. On IBMs, you can, and sometimes with the remote control, this remote control, I believe, has a blackout button on it. IBMs, all you have to do is hit the B button on the keyboard, and it'll black out your screen. Control what your audience sees. You don't want them reading ahead. And again, if you're only using one idea per slide, they're not even going to be able to do that. Let's take a look at some photos. I'm going to put some words up, and I'm going to put some photos up. I want you to tell me which is more powerful. How many like the words? How many like the photographs? Yeah. Photographs are really powerful. Those words don't mean anything. Those photographs I can use in a bunch of different places. I can use the pillars for foundation if I'm talking about an art museum, or if I'm talking about culture, or I'm talking about ancient history, or I'm talking about foundation. Choose really good images. Don't choose images that your children go out and shoot with their iPhone. I can go to iStock Photo or Getty Images or a bunch of different places. All you have to do on the computer is go on Google and in Google images for sale or photographs for sale. They're great images. Those images, each of those cost me no more than $3. I have a huge library of images that I use when I'm doing a presentation. Be memorable. I talk about being memorable. Another thing that I think is really important is, and I talked about this at the beginning, I have what I call a grabber opening. Whether you like it or not, it gets your attention. Did I have your attention when I was stumbling through my presentation at the beginning? Even though you probably suspected it was a gag, some people will watch me and they'll think, this guy's horrible. We have to sit through this guy for 3 or 4 hours. Oh my gosh. It's a grabber opening. Get people's attentions. The worst thing you can say when you get up is, hi, I'm Tom Huffbauer, and I'm a presentation coach. Or, I work for blah, 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 and we've been around. Those are horrible openings. That gets your attention. And there are a lot of different techniques you can use to get people's attention. You could pull a chair over and stand on the chair. I like to sometimes enter the room at the back of the room. Everyone's looking toward the screen, and I start my presentation in the back of the room. Everybody, what do they do when they hear my voice? Everybody turns. I've got everybody's attention just like that. Grab people's attention. If you work in an industry where something in the news happens that's exciting, find a clip of that and put it on your screen and have that be the first thing that the first noise that they hear when you start your presentation. Architectural firms can do this. Insurance firms can do this. Grab people's attention with something that's in the news that applies to them. I see architectural firms all the time. They do. I've done a lot of training for a lot of engineering and architectural firms. They'll do that boring beginning. I say, bring the lights down, start some exciting music, and show me images of your buildings. Let me see that. And a bunch of them. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I've got your attention. What is this? This is different. I did some training for one group, and I talked about how to have a grabber opening. And when I do my individual coaching, I'll work with someone and say, I'll watch them do their presentation, we'll videotape it, watch the videotape, and then I'll say, tell me something about your company, or maybe I'll pull it out of their presentation, but tell me something about your company that relates directly to you that's exciting. And I'll try to help them find something that they can use as a grabber. They did that one time. They went to a client meeting, and they said the client was so impressed with the way they started out. They were competing against 7 other companies for this product they were selling. And when they got done, when they started out, they said, the people who were sitting in the room who had sat through 6 of these presentations said, we hope you're going to do something different than the other people did. If everybody gets up and does the same thing, if I do the same opening as everybody else in the room, or everybody else who you've been meeting, what sets me apart from my competition? The price? The quality? Look, if you're interviewing 6 architectural firms, and they're all really good architectural firms, what's going to grab you? One company had gone to their client. They had done a pitch for a project, and they didn't get it. And they went to their client afterwards, their possible client, didn't end up being their client, and they said, why didn't we get the job? And the people said, well, to be perfectly honest with you, you didn't entertain us in your pitch. And their first thought was, who wants to work for a company who feels like they need to be entertained? Their first thought should have been, how do we make our presentation more exciting so they feel engaged? That's what I'm recommending to you today. These are all things you can do to make your audience feel engaged and get them involved. And my last slide, don't be afraid to use these things. They're great. They're easy to use. Your audience will love it. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I really enjoyed talking to you this morning.